Welcome to Howard Brown Barber and Beauty Institute. Today we will be doing the review for Infection Control Principles and Practices. Let's begin. Cocci are bacteria that are, is it round-shaped, corkscrew-shaped, rod-shaped, or spore-shaped? If you chose A, rod-shaped, you are correct. Which type of bacteria can cause strep throat or blood poisoning? Is it Diplococci, Spirilla, Bacilli, or Streptococci? If you chose D, Streptococci, you are correct. Bacteria that grow in pairs and can cause pneumonia are, is it Diplococci, Bacilli, Staphylococci, or Streptococci? If you chose A, Diplococci, you are correct. Lyme disease and syphilis are caused by spiral or corkscrew-shaped bacteria called, is it Diplococci, Bacilli, Spirilla, or Cocci? If you chose C, Spirilla, you are correct. A chemical process that destroys most but not necessarily all harmful organisms on environmental surfaces is it disinfecting, sanitizing, cleaning, or sterilizing? If you chose A, disinfecting, you are correct. Bacteria generally consist of an outer cell wall containing a liquid called, is it nucleic acid, cytoplasm, protoplasm, or protons? If you chose C, protoplasm, you are correct. The process whereby bacteria grow to their largest size and then divide into two new cells is it binary fission, meiosis, photosynthesis, or metamorphosis? If you chose A, binary fission, you are correct. The presence of pus can be a sign of, is it immunity, congestion, a bacterial infection, or a sunburn? If you chose C, a bacterial infection, you are correct. A infection appears as a lesion containing pus and is confined to a particular part of the body. Is it systemic, local, primary, or secondary? If you chose B, local, you are correct. Which of the following is a condition caused by an infestation of head lice? Is it hepatitis, scabies, pediculosis capitis, or tinea pedis? If you chose C, pediculosis capitis, you are correct. The ability of the body to destroy, resist, and recognize infection is called, is it immunity, decontamination, inflammation, or regulation? If you chose A, immunity, you are correct. Disinfectants sold and used in the United States must carry blank registration number. Is it a Food and Drug Administration, FDA? Is it an Occupation Protection Agency, OPA? Is it a U.S. Department of Labor, DOL? Is it an Environmental Protection Agency, EPA? If you chose D, an Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, you are correct. Which agency publishes the guidelines known as standard precautions? Is it FDA, OSHA, CDC, or EPA? If you chose C, CDC, you are correct. In 2012, OSHA agreed to comply with the globally harmonized system of classification and labeling of chemical system, GHS, which requires the use of a standard format called blank, SDS, to replace the MSDS. Is it Safety Data Support, Surety Data Support, Safety Data Sheet, or Safety Data Standards? If you chose C, Safety Data Sheet, you are correct. A type of disinfectant with a very high pH that can damage the skin or eyes is called, is it alcohol and bleach, EPA registered chemicals, alcohol and quats, or phenolic disinfectants? If you chose D, phenolic disinfectants, you are correct. When washing your hands after you have used warm water, applied soap, and then rubbed your hands together until a lather forms, use a disinfected nail brush or brush your nails horizontally back and forth under the free edges and then up and down along the nail folds of the fingernails. The process for brushing both hands should take about, is it 5 minutes, 60 seconds, 45 seconds, or 10 seconds? If you chose B, 60 seconds, you are correct. Antiseptics are intended for, is it disinfecting instruments, reducing microbes on the skin, disinfecting equipment, or sterilizing equipment? If you chose B, reducing microbes on the skin, you are correct. Standard precautions require employers and employees to assume that all human blood and body fluids are potentially, is it infectious, harmless, dangerous, or toxic? If you chose A, infectious, you are correct. The SDS contains blank categories of information. Is it 10, 12, 14, or 16? If you chose D, 16, you are correct. When disinfecting a whirlpool foot spa after use by a client, you must circulate the disinfectant for blank or the length of time indicated on the product label. Is it 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 60 seconds, or 20 minutes? If you chose B, 10 minutes, you are correct. After cleaning and disinfecting a pipeless foot spa after each client, how should you dry it? Is it with a clean paper towel, with a clean linen towel, with a blow dryer, or let it air dry? If you chose A, with a clean paper towel, you are correct. Which form of hepatitis is the most difficult to kill on a surface? Is it hepatitis A, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, or hepatitis D? If you chose B, hepatitis B, you are correct. Accelerated hydrogen peroxide, AHP, is a recently approved form of disinfectant that only needs to be changed every, is it 5 days, 30 days, 7 days, or 14 days? If you chose D, 14 days, you are correct. It is important to wear gloves and blank while disinfecting non-electrical tools and implements. Is it remove jewelry, safety glasses, an apron, or a face mask? If you chose B, safety glasses, you are correct. Licensing enforcement and your conduct when you are working in the salon are regulated by blank agencies. Is it federal, state, city, or international? If you chose B, state, you are correct. Some disinfectants are harmful to salon tools and equipment. Is it antifungal, non-porous, hospital, or tuberculocidal? If you chose D, tuberculocidal, you are correct. As part of the SDS categories, first aid measures include important symptoms, effects, as well as: is it product use, required treatment, use restrictions, containment, and cleanup? If you chose B, required treatment, you are correct. Cutting living skin is allowed only by: is it advanced nail technicians, medical nail technicians, qualified medical professionals, or advanced cosmetologists? If you chose C, qualified medical professionals, you are correct. Fungal infections are much more common on the blank than on the hands? Is it face, feet, elbows, knees? If you chose B, feet, you are correct. Items that can be cleaned, disinfected, and used on more than one person, even if the item is accidentally exposed to blood or body fluid, are called, is it single use, porous, disposable, or multi-use? If you chose D, multi-use, you are correct. The process that destroys all microbial life is it sanitation, cleaning, decontamination, or sterilization? If you chose D, sterilization, you are correct. If the label on a disinfectant product includes the word concentrate, it means that the product must be, is it used without water, heated during use, diluted before use, or heated before use? If you chose C, diluted before use, you are correct. Quat solutions are blank disinfectants when used properly in the salon. Is it very effective, somewhat effective, never effective, somewhat adequate? If you chose A, very effective, you are correct. Using blank bleach can damage metal and plastics. Is it too little, diluted, any amount of, or too much? If you chose D, too much, you are correct. 5.25% sodium hypochlorite is also known as, is it white vinegar, household bleach, household ammonia, or table salt? If you chose B, household bleach, you are correct. Never let disinfectants such as phenols come in contact with your, is it implements, skin, gloves, or clothing? If you chose B, skin, you are correct. Items that are blank are also considered absorbent. Is it phenolic, parasitic, pathogenic, or porous? If you chose D, porous, you are correct. It is recommended that salons identify each time a piece of equipment is used, cleaned, disinfected, tested, and maintained. Is it in the cosmetologist's memory, a notepad, in a logbook, or in a private computer file? If you chose C, in a logbook, you are correct. There is no additive, powder, or tablet that eliminates the need for you to blank equipment. Is it clean and sterilize, clean and disinfect, clean and maintain, clean and immunize? If you chose B, clean and disinfect, you are correct. Not having blank available poses a health risk to anyone exposed to hazardous materials and violates federal and state regulations. Is it SDSs, MRSAs, HRVs, or CDCs? If you chose A, SDSs, you are correct. Antimicrobial and antibacterial soaps are blank regular soaps or detergents. Is it slightly more effective than, no more effective than, just as effective as, or slightly less effective than? If you chose B, no more effective than, you are correct. Blank include guidelines for the use of gloves, masks, and eyewear when contact with blood or body secretions containing blood or blood elements is a possibility. Is it standard preconditions, universal provisions, standard precautions, or universal preparations? If you chose C, standard precautions, you are correct. After they have been properly cleaned and disinfected, implements should be stored in a blank container. Is it permanently sealed, disposable, clean, uncovered, clean, covered? If you chose D, clean, covered, you are correct. After each client, you should properly clean the basic foot basin or tub and then add the appropriate amount of disinfectant and let it soak for blank or the time recommended by the manufacturer. Is it 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 minute, or 10 seconds? If you chose A, 10 minutes, you are correct. Before beginning any service, you should wash your hands using pump soap, warm water, and is it chemical disinfectant, clean disinfected nail brush, clean disinfected sponge, or chemical exfoliant? If you chose B, clean disinfected nail brush, you are correct. A disease that is spread from one person to another is called an blank. Is it systemic disease, contagious disease, toxin, or fungicidal? If you chose B, contagious disease, you are correct. The one-celled microorganisms having both plant and animal characteristics are called, is it flagella, fungi, cocci, or bacteria? If you chose D, bacteria, you are correct. The transmission of blood or body fluids through touching, kissing, coughing, sneezing, or talking is known as blank transmission. Is it indirect, infection, sterile, or direct? If you chose D, direct, you are correct. Transmission of blood or body fluids through contact with an intermediate contaminated object such as a razor, extractor, nipper, or an environmental surface is known as, is it direct transmission, direct portability, indirect transmission, or indirect transference? If you chose C, indirect transmission, you are correct. Various poisonous substances produced by some microorganisms are called, is it tinea, toxins, bacteria, or flagella? If you chose B, toxins, you are correct. A disease that is spread from one person to another person is it a communicable disease, an infectious disease, an occupational disease, or a systemic disease? If you chose A, communicable disease, you are correct. A disease caused by pathogenic organisms that enter the body and which may or may not be spread from one person to another person is it a systemic disease, an infectious disease, an occupational disease, or a contagious disease? If you chose B, an infectious disease, you are correct. As part of the SDS 16 categories, toxicology information includes routes of exposure, related symptoms, and is it safe handling and storage, acute and chronic effects, exposure and protection, or restrictions and transportation? If you chose B, acute and chronic effects, you are correct. Any organism of microscopic to submicroscopic size is it Staphylococcus, Streptococcus, Mycobacterium, microorganism? If you chose D, microorganism, you are correct. The removal of blood or other potentially infectious materials on an item's surface and the removal of visible debris or residue is called, is it disinfection, cleaning, decontamination, or sterilization? If you chose C, decontamination, you are correct. Blank disease affects the body as a whole, often due to under or over-functioning internal glands or organs. Is it a systemic, an infectious, an occupational, or a contagious? If you chose A, systemic, you are correct. The determination of the nature of a disease from its symptoms and or diagnostic tests is it an analysis, a disinfection, a direct transmission, or a diagnosis? If you chose D, a diagnosis, you are correct. Blank is a condition in which the body reacts to injury, irritation, or infection. Is it an allergy, an inflammation, a contagion, or an exposure incident? If you chose B, an inflammation, you are correct. A parasitic disease may be caused by, is it bacteria, bacilli, lice, or cocci? If you chose C, lice, you are correct. A blank is a submicroscopic particle that infects and resides in cells of biological organisms and is capable of replication only through taking over the host cell's reproductive function. Is it cocci, virus, bacterium, or parasite? If you chose B, virus, you are correct. The virus that causes AIDS is it hepatitis B virus, human papillomavirus, hepatitis C virus, or human immunodeficiency virus? If you chose D, human immunodeficiency virus, you are correct. Contact with non-intact skin, blood, body fluid, or other potentially infectious materials that are the result of the performance of an employee's duties is it an allergy, an inflammation, a contamination, or an exposure incident? If you chose D, an exposure incident, you are correct. The scientific name for barber's itch is it tinea capitis, tinea pedis, folliculitis barbae, or tinea spirilla? If you chose C, folliculitis barbae, you are correct. Organisms that grow, feed, and shelter on or in another organism while contributing nothing to the survival of that organism are, is it cocci, bacilli, parasites, or debris? If you chose C, parasites, you are correct. The presence or the reasonably anticipated presence of blood or other potentially infectious materials on an item's surface or visible debris or residues is called a. Is it infection, contamination, inflammation, or allergy? If you chose B, contamination, you are correct. The term blank describes a ringworm fungus of the foot. Is it Tinea capitis, Tinea spirilla, Tinea barbae, or Tinea pedis? If you chose D, Tinea pedis, you are correct. A reaction due to extreme sensitivity to certain foods, chemicals, or other normally harmless substances is a. Is it allergy, contamination, inflammation, or infection? If you chose A, allergy, you are correct. Blank is produced by organisms, including bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites. Is it a systemic disease, an infectious disease, a pathogenic disease, or a contagious disease? If you chose C, a pathogenic disease, you are correct. Illnesses resulting from conditions associated with employment are. Is it contagious diseases, occupational diseases, pathogenic diseases, or systemic diseases? If you chose B, occupational diseases, you are correct. As part of the SDS 16 categories, handling and storage lists precautions for safe handling and storage, including incompatibilities, ingredients, reactions, or identifiers. If you chose A, incompatibilities, you are correct. The methods used to eliminate or reduce the transmission of infectious organisms is called blank. Is it transmission control, infection reduction, organism control, or infection control? If you chose D, infection control, you are correct. Different bacteria move in different ways, and self-movement is known as, is it migration, motility, evolution, or locomotion? If you chose B, motility, you are correct. Blank is an abnormal condition of all or part of the body, or its systems or organs, which makes the body incapable of carrying on normal function. Is it an allergy, an infection, a disease, or a contamination? If you chose C, a disease, you are correct. Within the field of cosmetology, the ability to produce an effect is known as effectiveness, efficacy, productivity, or strength. If you chose B, efficacy, you are correct. Add blank when diluting to prevent foaming, which can result in an incorrect mixing ratio. Is it disinfectant to water, tongs to water, water to disinfectant, or draining basket to disinfectant? If you chose A, disinfectant to water, you are correct. This concludes the review for infection control principles and practices. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel so that you are notified when new videos come out. If you'd like more information on classes and to join our community, please visit our website at howardbrownonline.com.